Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SoDA series live. Last episode of the season. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you're all hanging in there. And as we were just joking in the green room, get ready to stick the landing for 2024. I'm Tom Beck. I'm Executive Director at SoDA. SoDA is a global organization for founders and leadership teams at digital design studios. And we've been around since 2007 and exist to help each other get smarter about running the business. And the SoDA Series Live is a collaboration with the Adobe design team. And we're now in about our fourth year, I think, of doing this. We launched it in the depths, in the bowels of COVID. And we're just thrilled to keep this going. Each month, we feature a conversation with a design leader from within the SoDA community and around the world. So we're just thrilled to have you guys today. First, I want to introduce my co-conspirator and partner in crime, Talon Wadsworth. Talon is a principal designer on the Adobe team and runs and facilitates these conversations each month with a deft touch and great poise. So Talon, thanks for being with us today. It's awesome to see you as always.
That's great to see you, Tom. I'm so grateful for those 4 years. I mean,
Unreal.
Looking back in the rearview mirror, that it feels almost a little longer, but then time collapses and it feels like no time at all. So,
Absolutely.
To be with you.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure some of the audience can appreciate that and empathize with that during the COVID year of figuring out ways to try to stay connected with your communities and do some meaningful things with extra time that you had. That's what spawned this whole thing. I don't think when we launched it then we thought it would be going on for 4 years. I thought we looked at it as a nice diversion during 2020, and it's just been thrilled to host a bunch of amazing conversations over these years, and it's one of the highlights of each month for me, for sure.
Same. Yeah.
Yes, and so for our guests today, I want to welcome Ben Langsfeld. Ben is a chief design officer at Buck. Buck is a member and collaborator in the SoDA community. They're a global creative design and digital experience company working with a bunch of incredible brands: Microsoft, Amazon, Airbnb, Netflix, on and on and on. And they work out of studios in LA, New York, Sydney, Amsterdam, and London, with, of course, lots of people who work in all the in-between spaces. So Ben, thanks for being with us today. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
For those of you in the audience, I'm going to drop off the camera here and I will be in LinkedIn interacting with the comments and questions. And if you do have questions, please post them in the LinkedIn thread and I'll make sure to get those to Talon and Ben. So with that, I'll drop out and have a great conversation today, gentlemen.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom. Ben, it's such a pleasure to have you joining us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
How are the plans shaping up for the holidays? You guys surviving?
We're surviving. We've got our big holiday party tonight. We had our big end of year company meeting a couple of days ago, so we're flying high on the vibes, but we're also, like you said, a little on fire. Trying to stick the landing.
Sprint to the finish. Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
And in sight. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you. And I want to start by saying, so not only we'll get to, I want you to kind of fully introduce yourself, but also, is it Buck's 20-year anniversary as well?
It is. Yeah, it's our 20th anniversary. And also, my 20th year here. I was one of the first hires to come in and help shape this thing. So it's been a wild ride. There are a bunch of us that have been there that long. And I think that's kind of what's special about the place, is like this community that's been around working with each other since like the late 90s. It's kind of crazy.
That's amazing. And sort of, again, to grow, professionally, kind of each on their individual journey, but then to grow as a team. I mean, that's such an accomplishment. So I really just want to say congratulations right at the top, because to be able to sort of, stick with each other, again, build these relationships, and then continue to grow and develop over time and evolve, again, such a huge accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we feel the same way. And it's sort of like our approach to even our partnerships and our client work. Like we do really think of ourselves in the relationship business. We're not in a services business, and we're always trying to just sort of grow together, learn our partners' values, their needs, their goals, their problems, their pain points. And I think that being that kind of trusted partner with that longevity, where they are coming back to these familiar faces. It was funny. we were at an event recently, and I was talking to a few of my IBM partners, and they were like, they just learned how big we were, and they're like, but we always get the same 15 people. How does that? And they were like, it's by design, like we try to create an intimacy and this like familiarity so that there's a lot of trust built, and then we can grow that relationship. And behind the scenes, there's like an army of people really coming up and servicing the creative needs, but like that sort of facilitation is very, very curated.
Yeah, amazing. I want to get back to that, but I first just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, and then kind of take us back on, kind of, the start of that journey. Like, tell us, introduce yourself, and then tell us kind of a little bit about your creative journey, how you came to sort of be at Buck in those early days, and kind of the journey you've been on as a designer, as a creative leader in the industry.
That sounds great. So, my name's Ben Langsfeld. I'm the Chief Design Officer at Buck. I've been there since the beginning. We started off very small shop. A lot of the founding members and our founders were at a company called Heavy, and I was at University of Pennsylvania at the time with I met this creator, collaborator, friend, family member at this point, Thomas Schmid, and we started a business together, and we serviced the music industry, the record labels, clothing labels. It was the 90s. It was that kind of vibe, and made big websites for movies and stuff like that. So we had a lot of fun being scrappy, but then we met these designers and creative directors, and one of them, Ryan Honey, the other Ryan Tate, as they were at Heavy, and we just worked on some projects that were so easy, and they had us do some illustration work, they had us do some design and style frames for animation, and it was just so like, we were hustling and trying to get people to pay our bills, and it was just so hard. And working with these guys was really easy. They paid us. We're like, whoa, this is awesome. And they started Buck, and that we just kept doing the same thing. So we would just sort of hop in, do some designs, boom, there we go. And we did a pitch in 3D, and they didn't even know we did 3D. And so we won, and they just brought us on a retainer, the two of us. And we still lived in Philadelphia at the time. And Buck was in LA primarily at that point. And we did that for a couple of years. We were like the first remote workers ever in 2001.
Yeah.
Or I guess that was 2004 at that point. And we were using AOL. Like, that's how we communicated. And we were like in a Adobe, I don't know, 8 at that point. I don't know. Right. Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah.
So it was that was a fun journey. And then, the beginning stages of Buck were very much driven around animation. That was like our bread and butter. It was what we loved. And we wanted to tell all these amazing stories through new mediums, new techniques. We brought in some creatives who were obsessed with puppets. And so we did a lot of puppet work. We never were really satisfied with one style and one look. And that original kind of instinct and behavior kind of shaped the way Buck grew over time, again, since a lot of us were there since the beginning. So at one point, Thomas moved out to LA. He wanted to be a little bit more involved in production, because we were really like the front end design, really curating the look and feel of everything. And my wife was in residency, becoming a doctor, and so she was sort of tethered to Philadelphia at the point. So we then I worked remote for another about 6 months to a year, and then we opened the New York office, and I came up to New York, and we've been there ever since. That was in 2006.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
A through line that I continue to see, I think, when it comes to the best creatives, the top creatives out there really pushing forward and pushing what it means to be a designer, in each of these sort of, evolutionary stages, is that drive, I think, to communicate in the mediums that are, just cropping up or just coming online, but really that drive to express and communicate ideas on these new mediums, again, seems to be the through line, for a lot of the top creators.
We were always very fascinated by new techniques, new technologies. And I think, even in, I'm sure we'll get to the AI conversation at some point, but it's, we're just so curious and so passionate about different ways to do things. And they all feel like this whole world, this whole pattern we're going through just feels so familiar, because something's new, something's novel, it's scary, it's exciting. And we just love to dig in and learn new ways to do things, because we're never like, we always made it like, there a lot of companies had like made a brand out of being consistent in a craft, right? A very specific craft, technique. Is it 3D design? Is it behavior? Is it sort of illustration and character focused? And we just wanted it all. We think of ourselves as like sort of creative omnivores, right? Where we love all different kinds of things, and we wanted to mix them all together to tell these stories that were rich and distinctive. And we used to have like you used to call like the style like a group show, where we'd have like different designers design different parts of projects so that you'd get this mashup technique. And that became like a signature look and feel for us. And then now when you look at our body of work, we just did this end of year reel. It was like, I think somewhere between 4 and 6 minutes long, and it had like hundreds of projects in it. And the range was just ridiculous, like from full on CG character work, like Pixar level, to down to like super specific, really focused graphic design and logo principles. And the behavior was just so fluid between all of it. And to us, that was just like a culmination of 20 years of just like fantastic storytelling and craft at the highest level that can just be expressed across every medium. And that to us feels like a great place for us to be. And sometimes it's a little challenging to describe it to people, because they're like, where's the focus? Where's the specialty? Everyone wants a little bit of specialty these days, but we just think of ourselves as specialists in everything.
In design and communication.
Yeah,
exactly. That's really amazing. How have you balanced kind of your personal growth and evolution at the same time, sort of being kind of shaping the larger sort of evolution and output of Buck, like as it's grown? How have you managed kind of your personal journey within all of that as a leader?
I've always felt there was definitely a couple of years that were transition that were harder than others, but for the first, I'd say 10 or so years, things were pretty consistent. Like, the clients changed, maybe a technique changed, maybe a new software kind of mix things up, or like some new talent like really shaped a couple of years of our practice. But for the most part, it was pretty similar. And then at about 2015, it really started to change fast, and the cycles of the company started to speed up. So, I started as a designer, art director, and my practice was in 3D. I loved working in cinema. I loved designing in cinema. So I was very much like very just rooted in like the physical and and design. So how like those two married together. I was not very much a great sort of motion artist. I always left that to my fellow keyframe masters. But as I kind of elevated through the ranks through art direction, creative direction, into sort of group creative direction, trying to really focus on what I could do to support the team from like the creative freedom that we were able to get and sort of negotiate and build trust with our clients. So it was like, it's always something like there's always a little bit of like trauma in growth. So there were like some very challenging partnerships or very challenging clients that I was like, I got this. And I would just jump in front and just try to absorb and understand where things were coming from, and try to articulate it the best I could to the client and to our team, so that everyone felt like there was, just to just dial down the tension in the room, because it would get, they get heated sometimes. And those moments really kind of made me realize that, I saw my value shifting from being a contributor to being more of this of a leader. But for me, leading is more elevating, pushing people forward, kind of giving them space and creating a garden for them to create and sort of ideate. So there was a shift there. But I think that now, as I've continued to grow and start thinking about the business, I take a very holistic approach to the way I look at it, where it's almost like the human body. There's like energy blockages. And I think when you get to a company of the scale of ours, there's like little tiny tweaks. We're named after Buckminster Fuller, and he always had this concept of the trim tab. Like, he is a trim tab, which is the tiny rudder on the rudder of a boat, of a huge tanker. and the little rudder kind of creates space for the rudder to move. And that is always what we've thought, like every single person can be that, can create that change within our business. And so I feel the same way, that my goal is to look for little areas of blockage, shift in language, shift in perception of the way that we do things, to help people kind of just be able to do what they do amazingly, and give them the room to experiment and play.
Yeah. No, thank you for kind of going into that a little bit more. I think it's one of those, I wanted to draw kind of a point to that, because I think that a lot of people in their careers, like as they grow, like, well, I'm a designer, I'm just going to be designing forever. Right. And not often do they have, say, like a model that they can look to and say,
Yep.
well, this is what growth looks like. This is what progression,
Mm-hmm.
as a designer, as a design leader looks like. And this is how you operate. And it's still needed, and it's still a sort of integral function, of doing great creative work, especially doing it at scale, as you're sort of saying with Buck. Were there any like models that you look to kind of help you on that journey? Like things that you referenced, or mentors that you look to say, like, well, this is, again, I could keep doing this forever, but something else is needed of me. I'm the one who can take that leap, can be that barrier, can be that buffer, can be that, that little piece on the rudder that is helping create that space for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think that there were definitely some direct mentorships and some indirect ones. One of our founders, Orion, he's my boss. We never really called each other bosses. We're just all part of this thing together. But yeah, so he was my mentor, and I really owe so much to him and the opportunities he gave me, but also by leading by example with empathy. He's kind, he's considerate, he's quiet, but yet has strong opinions, and voices them when he needs to. And I think that kind of approach to being just very thoughtful, not being the loudest person in the room, but being the maybe seeing things not the clearest, but seeing things clearly and seeing them with the pure intent, and listening and understanding. So that everything I do, I sort of model his behavior, and I've been finding my own sort of way through that, and I hope that I can. My goal is to be able to provide that to the people that I'm working with. Is like, oh, this is how you can lead a business without having it be about me. I think they made a decision a few years ago to make it not about them, and I really commend them in their sort of elevating out of the day-to-day business to focus on these bigger projects that they've been working on, to create room for us to, it's all about trust at the end of the day, and they had the trust in us, and we've been able to sort of take that and run with it. And, even in this company meeting, we had them sort of close out the meeting, and the founders, and we brought them both to tears with the way that we structured it and the way that the work shaped up. So I feel like we're doing all right.
Yeah. I mean, kind of creating that space, right? I think that is the signifier of a great leader, the one who's sort of planning ahead and kind of planning for people to sort of take over for them, right? So they can move on to that next phase of their career. And I think that's emblematic of the best leaders out there in the industry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would say the role that we kind of play now is like we have to kind of live in the future. We have to live like 2 years out, a year out, 6 months out, right? We're always kind of like trying to project where things are going, what we're feeling, who we're talking to. We're in conversations with people that, things are coming 6 months from now, right? And so for us, it's this balance of creating, giving and planting seeds within our talent, so that we're not like scaring anyone. We're not like, I'm pretty much an open book, but like it's hard to balance that sort of pressure of being able to exist into today and where we are as a business today and where we're going, and having to sort of translate to talent, to artists, to leaders. So, I've always, the more that I've gotten into this position, the more I empathize with, the founders and where they were operating for years. And so it's definitely, it's been a journey, but I think that the hope is that we can, like you're saying, like plant seeds, grow these little gardens for people to be able to take root, and then start to build a culture that we're just continuing to be super excited about.
Yeah, it's kind of the meta design problem. I always look at it that way as well as leadership. I want to get to some of the ways in which you as the chief design officer, creative officer, really facilitate the best work with some of the processes in that. But we had a couple questions from the audience, which I love. So thank you all for
Thanks for
joining the
tuning in.
conversation. And again, there's some StreamYard has added some fun little things, so we'll see if it might even pop up here at the bottom. We'll see how that goes. But for Maria in the chat, this is of course the question I think for everyone who grows in their career. How do you reconcile kind of missing out on doing the IC work, kind of the sort of individual creative work that you had previously done today with the sort of the role that you have? Because that's a great question for anyone. How do you reconcile that? How do you balance that?
There's a period of time where it's hard. There's a moment where you want to do it all. You want to be an individual contributor, but you want to be a leader at the same time. And the code switching is borderline impossible. And you push through it. I just think back to those years and I'm like, wow, they were exhausting. But because when you're in that individual contributor mode, you're focused, you're hyper in there. And then all of a sudden you have these meetings and calls distracting you. And you're like, oh, I got to pull out of that moment. And you have no real time for deep thinking and deep work. And I've slowly learned to know that my value is based on being available and being present and being, help problem solve, a lot of different challenges. I think when I'm working on projects and I'm getting close to the work, my role is to really, be very, very active in the beginning of projects, being right there with the partners and trying to understand what the problem is and expose it. I think one of my strengths is being able to pull out all this information to get the problem up in the air in front of everybody to look at in a way, to understand and to truly truly comprehend what we're trying to solve. And that's been a mantra of mine. But I did notice in those years where I was transitioning, I was really struggling to scratch that creative itch. And so, I would do some renders and I'd come home and do some of my own art on this side at nights. But I was like, here I am, these long working days wrestling with clients. And then going home and just getting back on the computer. I had small kids at the time. So it was it was really, really challenging. And about 6 years ago, one of my original passions was music. And I made a choice early on in my career I kind of had to pick one because I couldn't do both of them to the level that I needed, to be as good as I wanted to be at whichever one it was. And I would find I would get lost in each one. So I chose design. And then, about 6 years ago, I kind of reverted back and I was like, you know what? I have space. I have time. I have this energy that I could get sort of obsessed with something that I wanted to learn. And so I picked up modular synthesizers. It was something I always wanted to do. So my good pandemic hobby was collecting a lot of synths. And that was a way for me to I could have the hardest day and solve tons of problems at work and then come home and just get lost in music for hours. And I'd be totally good. I'm like, yeah, I'm great. So it is definitely important if you come from a creative background and you do move into a management or leadership role. I always think it's very, very important not to just abandon that creative interest and spirit, but to channel it in any way you possibly can that's meaningful so that you have that creative outlet. Otherwise, you do get you can get stagnant and you can kind of get jaded and a little bitter. And I think in this industry, you can't get to that because if you do, that you can just feel the negative sentiments kind of oozing out everywhere, and you're not really sure where it's coming from, but it can create challenges for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. That sort of blocking of that energy, right? You do need that outlet, and I think you said that really well. And I'm sort of constantly looking for that, and often you're trying to create those opportunities for the team as well. So a lot of projects, a lot of sort of building that culture here at Adobe has been, how do I create these opportunities for the team to have those similar outlets? Because I totally agree with you. Tiffany in the chat had a kind of a related question here as well, which is, as techniques and software continues to change, how do you kind of stay in touch with the kind of cutting edge creative work that's going on out there? And how do you stay connected, through your own interest, or is it really about like how you stay connected, through the team itself as well, and sort of the personnel and the people coming on board?
Yeah, I think, it's a great question. It's, it's getting increasingly hard to keep up for sure. But I think we did a really great job of bringing in a lot of really, really curious talent from all over the world and all over the spectrum of industries. And if you surround yourself with people who are better than you at anything, you start to absorb all of their anxieties and curiosities. So we're Slack power users. Slack themselves told us we use Slack more than they do. In some of the stats in our end of year meeting, we have 500 channels that are just public fun channels, right? I think we've got tens of thousands of project channels, but just the curious, what we're talking about branding, we're talking about machine learning, we're talking about marketing, and we're talking about UX and UI. And so for me, these channels, like having people constantly surface, and it really comes back to around, creating an environment where people want to share rather than keep the knowledge, right? They're always kind of like poking at things, and they're like, hey, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of this? And did you guys see this over the weekend? And so we're just constantly getting exposed to new tools, new techniques. And, I think if you embrace a culture of curiosity in your walls, that, we're always going to be looking for the new, the novel, the rich, the precious. And I think, the one thing that we always talk about in the face of AI is that, we as humans crave stuff that is precious. It's hard to find, right? It's take, anything from fashion to clothing to automobiles, like the rarity of things is what makes it feel important. And, with AI, that's kind of the antithesis for it. And so what we're trying to navigate is where is that sort of angle of what feels pure, what feels human, and what feels really precious, so that we can then start to tap into ways that it can be really meaningful for culture.
Yeah. I mean, to dig into that a little bit more and get a little more tactical, in your role, how are you creating a process, or I know in our previous conversation, you referenced kind of an internal architecture to really facilitate, those developments, in design processes, creative workflows. Talk a little bit more tactically about kind of what you're doing, that kind of meta design challenge of designing a studio practice. Like how do you go about doing that? What are some of the techniques and things that you've looked to and tried out?
We've tried out, department structures, and they've been extremely helpful, right? Where like not one person can oversee everything, right? We've reached a scale where not, there isn't like the sort of leaders at the top that can see everything, right? Like some of our smaller offices have that, right? But in the US, we're north of 300, we probably get close to 500 with freelance. So it's just too many teams and too many projects to keep track of. And so, me and my sort of creative partner in LA, Kevin Walker, our CCO, we kind of divide and conquer, and we're kind of swarming around, going where we're needed. But again, it's like in a daily practice, you're looking right in front of you, like just a few feet, and it's really hard to have that bird's eye view. So I've been working on I guess call it a framework. It's a methodology. We're looking at new ways of organizing the business that kind of feels like the way projects flow, rather than departments that feel like they're silos. And so we're trying to break that down, how to find ways to even just think about the way we work with each other in these kind of wheels where we're moving through the creative process rather than assembling teams to sort of go off and do their thing. So we're, especially since we're getting more into like creative development and strategy, like a lot of times we're working on stuff that we're not making anything yet. So it's like it's hard to, we don't want to jump and build that team and have people sitting around with, just blinking on meetings, not doing anything for a couple of weeks. So it's also wasteful in terms of effort and money. So we're looking at ways to sort of optimize there, but we're also thinking about, ways we can, really leverage retrospectives in a way to understand not just like what happened, how can we get better, what are we doing, but like, where are we showing up? How are our clients sort of perceiving us in these movements? Like, how are we building trust with our partners? Are we innovating? What tools are we using and leveraging, and where in the process? And also like looking at, what are we doing for our teams? Were these projects really fulfilling? Are we looking at ways to sort of add creative investment to things so they can be more fulfilling? So we really look at these ideas, and I think that was the sort of headline of the talk of, there's creative excellence, there's creative growth, and there's creative fulfillment. And we think of these three as these, it's not really a tug of war, but there's like a Venn diagram, right? And so, because you can forfeit creative fulfillment on the path towards creative excellence, right? You can just, burn people and because everyone wants that they want that precision and that perfection. We're all perfectionists, but your body can take a toll. You can lead to long burnout. And so we're looking at ways to have this, picture that we can sort of place on and some business intelligence. We have a lot of business intelligence around the finance and production and the way that we sort of staff and the way that we leverage our talent in terms of like a financial model, but that doesn't say a whole picture. Like we could go and close a month and it can be an amazing month, and I look at the teams and they're all fried, and it's like, that's not the goal. So we're looking at this, we're trying to find balance, and balance is one of our our values, right? There's these dichotomies, there's tensions between, right, like creative excellence and fulfillment, but like, static and behavior, illustration and animation, and or I don't know, the list goes on. But the idea of being very specific about these questions that we're asking our leaders at the end of a project, to then create this data that can tell more of a holistic story about the creative health and the creative excellence of our company. And then we look at creative growth. That's like, are we looking for new ways to show up? Are we getting introduced to new teams? Are we expanding a relationship based on something we've done quite well? I mean, I think that's sort of how we've gotten to where we've been, is the idea of taking on a scope, working on a project, delivering. And with the question that would always come next is, that was awesome, but do you guys do this? And we were like, sure, let's go. And so a lot of our earliest kind of, real growth areas happen with very similar questions like that. Like Meta was like, we have, front facing camera data now. What do you think people would want to do with that? What do you think would be interesting? And that's when we, brought in a bunch of technologists, and we have, from then we built all of the AR filters that Instagram used for the first, 3 or 4 years. So if you used a face filter in the first 4 years at Instagram, we made them all. And they started to crowdsource them and change the model of how they did it. But it was really just great to sort of be there on that front line, pioneering a new technology and the way that people could interact with it. And those are those moments where we're looking at, creative growth. Like, are we leveraging a new spoke of the wheel, so to speak? Are we exploring this new direction that may come back and support our other teams in really powerful ways?
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate, I think, the approach that you're taking, which I think a lot of kind of the best and kind of creators are doing, which is really looking at it more holistically and saying, creating this space, creating opportunities for growth, for skill development, for, this space to sort of achieve potentially that excellence, right? Like that resonates with me. How do you balance that against, a very, what seems to be the larger trend? And you mentioned Meta, and of course, me being here in the Bay Area, I'm surrounded by, right, the idea, the ROI of design, that somehow that ROI can be quantified through analytics, right?
Yeah.
So you're creating space internally, you're defining growth and excellence. How are you defining success, externally? How do you talk about the value, right, that your approach, your processes, your team brings to these very, again, metric driven clients that might be approaching you for work? Like, is there a way that you've found to tell that story? Do you find yourself contorting into different into different positions just to sort of adapt to the needs of the clients? Like, how do you balance that?
I think it's a yes and story, right? There's, it's like you got to play ball and go through testing and show measurement and understand, what sentiment looks like at scale. Like, we're not talking about audiences in the hundreds of thousands. We're talking about audiences in the millions and billions. And so you have to definitely understand the metrics behind it and the sort of return, so to speak, as you're saying. But I do think at the end of the day, and this is a new thesis that we've been playing around with, that, great design is the difference between what people like and what they love. And so what we're hoping to achieve is, creating work that really stops people in their tracks and makes them feel something. And that is something you can't really measure, but you can feel. And you can feel it through, the way that we feel it is through partnership, where they come back and they're like, let's do it again. Right. And I think those are those moments that I think are, sorry, I got a buzzer going on over here.
No worries.
Those are those moments that I think are really, that's what we're striving for. Our measure of success personally is if they come back. We're primarily a project-based company. Like, we do some retainers, but they're few and far between. We love them, but we actually like the pressure that holds us accountable for the creative process in a project-based scope. It kind of puts us on, like, it's like Sunday, football afternoon. Like, it's on, and you've got to deliver, and you've got to make sure it counts. And when they come back, that to us is a testament that we've done our job appropriately, and that the work did resonate, and it has rippled through the business. Sometimes our scopes turn from a project based to a retainer, because what we're doing is we're basically filling their internal teams with these external ideas, these different perspectives, new ways of thinking stuff. And a lot of times, a lot of these big organizations look inside for reference and for inspiration. And so we can come in as this like accelerant to sort of help shape their ideas and be more of a inspiration consultant. And so even if we're not the ones that are engineering the final code that's going to go into product, sometimes we are, but if we're not, they're going to do that. We're there to feed them and constantly grow their teams and inspire them.
That's really fascinating, because I think one of the things I talk to my team a lot about is, like, we could provide the perfect solution kind of out the door, but honestly, our job a lot of times is to facilitate the discussions, right? To facilitate kind of the next iteration and the next step that's being sort of taken, by our internal stakeholders, by our internal collaborators. We have the ability to put something down that people can react to and respond to. And so I find that really fascinating that you've seen some success in just being that kind of external force to really drive the conversation with some of these internal teams.
Yeah, we're like, we think of ourselves as like an internal team's best friend for that reason. We've seen the major industry shift where a lot of the companies are bringing, pieces of the ad world in-house, not everything, here and there. And so what we've been doing is really trying to navigate where are the other sides of the synapse that we can fill for those clients. So whether it's an account role, like we've been on some projects recently, but they don't have a producer. They don't even have a project manager on their team. And so so we can come in and be that for them. We can also facilitate, we can be a fractional design team when, say, someone comes on board as a new design director and they need to build a brand team, but they don't have one yet. We can help be that team for a period of time, help recruit some talent and sort of onboard them. So, we really think of ourselves as a Swiss Army knife for those in-house teams to be what they need when they need it. We're not we never really sell soup to nuts. End to end isn't really our manifesto. It's like more of like an end to what you need. We want to be, because I think the other side of that ROI conversation is the dollar, right? And so, we're not a cheap option, and we know that. And because the talent we have, it's like you have to, give them what they're due, and in order to get access to that talent, you do have to pay a premium. So we just are very, very conscious about when and why people are asking us for things. And when we get a scope that's like this deliverables list that's super long, we're like, why? Do you need all that, or do you need this framework, this philosophy, maybe this system there, this toolkit that can help you extend it in-house rather than having to go to us every time to do it?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that take, and I think the whole industry should also appreciate, I think the sort of the premium you put on talent and its ability to be that insurgent force, to stand out, in the crowd, and like, hey, like that's what's required. Like, it's not, it has a price, and it's worth it. The value of it is worth it. So
and it's not just dollars, it's culture, it's community. It's like, how do you create that environment, right? And so if our superpower is to be able to create that environment where this talent can flourish and grow and be the best versions of themselves, then that is something that I think a lot of clients should see as value, that they can have access to that pool of knowledge, of talent, of expertise that can then accelerate their internal and external ideas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 20 years, I think, is a testament, I think, to that approach, that culture that you've created. So thank you from me and the whole industry, I think, for carving a path on that. I really appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
And, we've talked about it, I think, a little bit here and there, just in terms of, the ways in which talent culture, right, can have an impact on the results to stand out in this age of content proliferation, shall we say. So let's kind of dig into that a little bit. And you mentioned maybe we dive into the AI conversation. Well, here we are, right?
It's inevitable.
Yes, because I think you're talking about all the things I think that a lot of us have intuited and a lot of us are trying to put into practice, which is, again, I want to just boil it down to authenticity, but there has to be a point of view, I think, coming across to catch people's attention, something that resonates with them. So talk about how you're approaching sort of design and design practice in the age of now these AI tools, these generative AI tools, and how you're thinking about them.
Yeah, like Pantone has their color of the year. I feel like in our industry, we've got like the word of the year. This year it was AI, and I think next year it's the word you just said, is authenticity, right? I think we're all going to be looking for ways to make it feel like us. Everyone talks about personalization and how AI is going to be the gateway to it, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I think at the end of the day, it's got to feel natural. It's got to feel good. It's got to feel powerful, right? It's got to feel not like it's a threat of taking jobs, but the threat of amplifying. And I think there's a lot of that happening. I think it's a lot of nerves have been settled over the last year. It was a little chaotic this time last year. But for me, we like to think of ourselves as technology. We're really interested, and we're like curious, but we're not like evangelists. We're not out there preaching, this is the new solve, this is the new way, right? We're out here thinking about the best ways to create something beautiful. And if that is something that is something that these tools can give us more power and more control, that's great. But if it's making it cheaper or more efficient, that's a little less exciting for us, except when it's like maybe used in like early stage discovery, or, we think of our form of strategy practice at Buck as really the ability to sort of not just see a path forward. We don't like do a whole strategy session like, here it is. We go and we do, here are these multiple ways forward, and we kind of show that future, and in 4 ways. A partner that we worked with recently, he was like, my internal team, we have a lot of demand, we've got a lot of surfaces, and we've got people constantly giving us requests for work. So this deeper brand work, we're only able to really see like one territory forward or one strategic way forward at a time. And what we can do is dock on and provide 4. Like, here are 4 versions of you. Pick one, right? And that ability to sort of, I think we all need to see it, and I think what we saw in some of like the traditional agency model where you'd sell something, but then the work would come to a production company and they'd be like, well, you can't make that. And they're like, what do you mean? So I think that the ability to be accountable is something that, we're always interested in. And so if AI can help us do that, that's great too, right? If it can help us sort of see things, we're in this like very, very sticky position when it comes to AI, because on one end, we are helping the big brands brand their models, right? So we're helping IBM brand Watson, we're helping Microsoft brand Copilot, we're helping OpenAI with some stuff. We're helping who else? Oh, I don't know. Firefly. We're helping you guys. So we're trying to figure out ways to sort of bring value and meaning to audiences, but at the same time, we've got artists who are existentially wrestling with the sort of the morality and the sort of the sort of darker side of the models. And to us, it's just about making sure the ideas are good, making sure that the voice that we're speaking through is honest. And so we really take this like just a very holistic approach to why we're using it. And it has to feel like it's meaningful and it's adding something of value. We also have, contracts that say we can't use AI. We got caught in a PR kind of swirl where we did a whole campaign that was beautifully illustrated like Renaissance paintings, and the community called out that, oh, look, now they're using AI to do it, but we hand painted everything. And we didn't really want to go out and be super public about, squashing trolls online, because we just felt like that's not our place, because we are also servicing these big brands on how to leverage their basically their new roadmap, right? So for us, we're trying to not play Switzerland, but just trying to be very careful about overemphasizing anything that feels so polarizing that it will cause more harm than good, right? And so for us, always the way that we've explored a lot of new technology is just experimenting. So we're just like experimenting like endlessly inside our walls to play and explore. We're building our own AI assistants to help just to play and understand like what a personality would feel like. Are they, what is the future Clippy going to really feel like, right? And so we've done a few of them for brands. Like one of my favorites was the one we recently did with Notion, their little assistant, where we worked with their in-house illustrator to create a like very quiet personality that came through, and he's supportive, he's helpful, he's listening, but he's not in your face, right? And so those are moments that I think are really strong for us to use it for the right reasons and play with it in a way that we're trying to get better. It's really like we just take a growth mindset to all of this stuff. So, I think in next year, this time, I think we'll probably have a very different feeling. Last year it was kind of fear. This year it's kind of like opportunity and excitement and curiosity, and so next year might be something totally different. Who knows?
Feels like maybe we have a follow-up then next year to dig into that more. But look at that, planning the future. I heard something actually this morning that actually resonated with some of the things that you're saying. And I just kind of wanted to sort of put it out there, which is, some of the original sort of developers, of, what we're now sort of dubbing AI, their real goal was to help us understand where we've been so that we open up potentially more opportunities for where we're going in the future. Right. And I thought that resonated really nicely with what you were saying in terms of, using it in the early concept phases as ways to open up new avenues of potential for the project. Right. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there because I thought that was really kind of poetic this morning when I heard that. And again,
I agree. I mean, I think I was when the first kind of studies and models were coming out, I admit I was a little disappointed that we chose art and music and the most soulful things to be the things that we would test out here, to be the first ones. And then as I started to gain some awareness as to why, and it makes sense. Like if we like, I think the real kind of beauty of what's going to become of this is the the real advancement of technology to be able to, like, we're live in a data world now. So if we can make sense of that data in ways that are super powerful, that just makes it stronger, that makes it smarter. So all those things, I'm on board. Great, no notes. But when it comes to the generative stuff, for me, it was like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. We're trying to find the things that have the most soul in our culture, to be the things that we measure against to see if it passed the like, is this real? Does it work? Do I feel it? Right. And I think we're all battling, right? And, for me, I was like watching a car commercial, I was watching football and I saw a car commercial that was obviously AI generated. And I, like, threw up a little bit in my mouth, and my brother didn't even notice it. He didn't even see it. I was sitting with him, Thanksgiving, and I asked him, and he was like, "Oh, just look normal." And I was like, "Oh, right. It's a holiday car commercial. We're used to it. We know what they look like. We know what they sound like. We know so all I need to know is the name of the car, the price, and the music, the jingle. And it's a car commercial." And so, great. Okay. That worked for them. And, it exploded in our walls. Like, everyone was like crazy about it. And to me, I'm like, like, design isn't going to matter to everybody. And so for us, it's just a matter of like making sure that goal and that objective is clear. Of like, for them, it was selling cars, but for us, it's about creating beauty and craft. So sometimes they're going to be at odds with each other. But I think now that we're seeing that, AI generative design is going to get powerful and amazing and beautiful, but it's going to be on us to be able to channel it, to find meaning in it, and to make it feel human, and, like, pull on our heartstrings the way a beautiful song does. So, I'm hopeful, but, it's definitely, like I said, we do live in the future as business leaders, but the AI definitely has created, like, I got an astigmatism or something. It's a little foggy. It's a little smudgy up there, right? So we're just taking it one day at a time.
Yes, indeed. And we're again, I like the idea of following up in a year and sort of revisiting this with you. So look forward to that. We're coming here up at the end, and I want to there was a great question from Jalen Hunter in the chat earlier. And of course, we both get a lot of industry people in these conversations, but also a lot of people who are just starting out in their careers. So Jalen's question, right? So if you're fresh coming out of college with a degree in design, and what are some tips and tricks as you're getting to help people as they're getting started? Just clients.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that question, because it's like, all of the big, meetings and conferences and discussions I've been in this year, the biggest theme that's been consistent is, what are we doing for our junior talent? Mm-hmm. And the truth is, like, we're not doing great. And I think, we're trying as hard as we can. And, we brought in a bunch of apprentices this year. We're hosting lots of talks. We're trying to do as many portfolio reviews as we can. But that only gets you so far. And the truth is that, like, with demands of our partners, like, we need to be very, very effective and very fast. And so that's really hard to onboard and to grow, young junior talent. So what I would say is, like, I've seen waves of this before. This isn't the first time this has happened. There were a couple years where it was really slow in the hiring space in the creative industry. And so what I would recommend is to put your head down and make, just constantly be curious, constantly put stuff out there. I get fed people's books all the time because something they post on Instagram. So it's really democratized the ability to be seen and to create audience. When you think about, like, the creator playbook, I think designers can start to use that in their own practice. And, it's a lot about brand building. It's a lot about creating the work that you're really fascinated with. A lot of times that might be doing tutorials and getting some of the techniques under your belt. And so there is that delta between people who look like they've just been doing tutorials and are putting some stuff out that looks like it's great, but not necessarily new and novel, or not have a distinctive voice. But I found, like, even when I was doing daily renders and trying to sort of tap into that practice, I found that the more I looked at social media, the less creative my work became. And so when I stopped, I would just start making, and it felt like me. And I had this conversation with myself in the way that I was learning and growing as an artist. So I think, we're in this age of like technology overload, and I would say go back to fundamentals and draw and write and create your own world that you want to play in. And then when people see that world, they will come knocking.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Ben. And I think anytime we kind of get wrapped up in the kind of all the sort of external factors of the design industry, we do kind of forget that like it really is about making, it really is about finding that creative voice. And so I think that's a great advice to end on. Ben, it was such a pleasure chatting with you. And Tom and I are going to put the note. I want to follow up. I want to have a sort of ongoing sort of development and see how this is going for you and for your team as you navigate this new and exciting space. But thank you so much, Ben. It was such a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy to speak with you as well.
Yeah, I just weigh in here. Thank you both. It was such a great conversation today. I always like to point this out of a few things that really struck me. But first of all, I love that term, creative omnivores. That's excellent. I've filed that away in my cool terminology book. So thank you for that, Ben. I love this idea of really kind of like looking for blockages, especially as a leader. You talked about being available and present as one of the best usages of your skills as you move away from being like the hands-on craftsperson or practitioner in your agency, but serving your team and serving your people by being available and present and helping them remove blockages that can help them become better at what they do and produce better work. I think that's just beautiful advice for all of us as leaders, really, in kind of any discipline. Yeah. I love being reminded of, work is, of course, we're in a commercial business. We get paid for what we do. But I think if we get too focused on the idea of creativity as commerce and a transaction, and we lose those pieces of community and culture, as you've talked about, that's a big hole that it leaves in our soul. And I just have such regard for Buck as a studio, and Ben, for you and the team and what you guys have created. It really is exceptional, and I urge everyone on this call to check out their work and check out what you guys are building at Buck, but also within Residence. Largely, it's a really optimistic and I think wonderful view on creativity and how we need to nurture talent, and and in some ways, I think an antidote to any fear or apprehension or anxiety that people feel around AI. So thank you for all that stuff. Really appreciate it. Such a great conversation today. Talon, always awesome to see you. For those on the call, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your contributions. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season and a new year. We will be back in January. I don't think we have the speaker lined up just yet, but follow us on LinkedIn and we will post updates there. But thanks again, everyone, for joining SoDA Series Live. We'll see you again soon.
See everyone.
Bye.